Hi guys, and welcome to this week's BartenderHQ.com podcast. Thank you for joining me this week, and this week's show is all about Flair Bartending. So if you've ever been interested in flipping a bottle, throwing it around like Tom Cruise, keep watching, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at BartenderHQ. Here's your host, David Eden-Sangwell.
So just to acknowledge, for those of you guys who are watching the video version of this podcast, you may have noticed that it looks a little bit different this week. The microphone's moved, all that sort of thing. We are in the process of rebuilding, redoing the BartenderHQ.com studio, which is essentially the spare bedroom in my house. So that is hopefully by next week we should have the new look studio all ready to go, which will be very nice. But that's not the subject of this week's show. Now, last night I was listening to Steve Schneider's podcast. If you guys haven't heard of this, Steve Schneider is one of the principal bartenders, I think the principal bartender now at Employees Only, which is, it's been voted the best cocktail bar in the world many times. Steve Schneider himself has just been voted world's greatest bartender, or Bartender of the Year, something along those lines, which he's being presented with at the Nightclub and Bar show over in Las Vegas, which is, I believe, John Taffer's show. So if you haven't had a listen to Steve Schneider's podcast, do get over there. The reason I was listening last night in particular, and enjoying it particularly, is the guest on the show was Christian Delpeche. Now, if you haven't heard of him, he is one of the world's greatest flair bartenders of all time. He is a 19 times world champion. In 2007, I think he mentioned in the show, he actually entered 25 flair bartending competitions, won 19 of them and placed top 3 in all of them. So that just gives you an idea of exactly the caliber of this bartender that we're talking about. He goes into a lot of his thoughts on flair bartending, his thoughts on working flair versus exhibition flair and all that sort of thing. So it's very, very good. It's well worth a listen, and also the extra episodes as well that Steve Schneider's putting out at the moment are excerpts from a book called The Long Pour, which is all bartender stories. I think most of the bartenders are British. It's certainly a British kind of led book, and it's excellent. The stories that are going out there are hilarious. I would point out they're not safe for work type things, not that bartenders really matter too much, but yeah, there is some swearing and that sort of thing, which we don't tend to have on this show, occasionally in the interviews, but very, very rarely. So do check that out if you've got time. But yes, as I say, Christian Delpeche, one of the best flair bartenders of all time, and he put out a long time ago, probably around about 2007, 2008, 4 DVDs of working flair moves and routines, which are excellent. They're some of the ones that I've worked from in the past, and he is fantastic. Now, the problem that I've always had with the flair bartending stuff, especially what you can find online, is that it kind of assumes a level of knowledge already. So what I'm working on, which you guys will know from last week's show, is I'm working with Reflex Arcadian to train a couple of bartenders that have never flared before, and one of them's never bartended before. And I'm putting together a set of video tutorials. They've all been filmed already. I'm just getting through the editing process at the moment. So the first set is going to be 5 videos. The first one is live now. If you go over to our YouTube page, and I'll also include a link to that in the show notes today. And essentially, it takes it from the very, very most basic moves. So the first video, for example, is how to spin a mixing tin, a shaker tin, on your hand. It's a half spin. It emphasises a little bit the importance of being able to do these moves left and right-handed. And what I'm essentially trying to do is put together a basic level flair bartender training that anyone can kind of pick up and learn it just from these videos. So I'd love for you guys to check those out. They're going to be on YouTube. I will probably end up posting them up on our Facebook wall as well. But there is a specific playlist. I've sorted out our YouTube channel now, so that is into a playlist for the podcast from when we started doing the video versions, and also a separate playlist which will be for all of these Flair lessons. Now, the first level is going to be very basic. The first 5 moves are single item moves. So there's a tin rotation in your hand, the palm spin. There is a single rotation from one hand to the other, I believe, which is using, it could be with a tin, could be with a bottle, I can't quite remember, but those will also be going up. There's some stuff with glassware, there's a move with a straw, you know, really, really basic stuff that anyone can kind of pick up and run with. And then the next 5 are more kind of about the pause, so bounce pause, bounce cuts, different cuts, reverse grip pause, that kind of thing that we can use for very basic bartending. Because these guys, they spent an hour, as I mentioned, the first time that I was working with them, they spent an hour purely working on pouring and bounce cutting and other cuts. And they're going to be jigger pouring anyway, so it's not actually too in-depth in terms of like the free pour type techniques, although that's something that I'm hoping to add to it later on. So if there's anything that you guys think would be missing from this kind of level of bartending, please take a quick look at these videos first. Let me know what you think of the style, the production and that kind of thing, and if you think it's clear enough and that you could learn from it. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. I've done it with a kind of voiceover thing, so I'm not trying to talk at the same time as doing these moves, demonstrating and that sort of thing. So I'd be really interested in your feedback on it. So why should you choose to Flair? Now, this is something that there are a few different camps, and you've got certainly mixologists, you've got Flair bartenders, you've got speed bartenders, and you've got your kind of basic, your regular bartenders that just make drinks and interact. Why I think Flair is important, and if you look back at my Russell Davis interview that we did a little while ago with Russell from Bar Rescue over in the States, he was talking about the fact that he started off very much inspired by the Tom Cruise movie, which actually Christian Delpeche mentions as well in his interview with Steve Schneider. He was very influenced by Tom Cruise in Cocktail, but he was also... he's now sort of his technique and his style has moved on. He doesn't call himself a Flair bartender as such anymore, but he still uses aspects of Flair. Things like fancy jigger pours, nice cuts, and there is a lot of Flair that you can actually use which will help your speed and the efficiency that you can bartend with. A big part of Flair is simply using both hands when you're actually working. If you have one hand sat by your side and not doing anything, that is really inefficient. And one of the big things with Flair is that you will learn to use both. Now, Flair shouldn't be slowing you down, but here is kind of 5 big reasons for me that Flair bartending is something that you and every other bartender should learn. Okay, so number 1, it is an instant way to show anyone that is watching you bartend that you actually care about your job. There's a lot of, especially in the UK, and I know this happens all over the world. Obviously, the majority of my experience is within the UK, but for a lot of bartenders, it's a fill-in job. It's not something that they're there to do as a career. It's not something that they want to be particularly good at. They just want to come in, earn their money, and go home. When you are a Flair bartender, instantly, anyone that's watching you can tell that you are passionate about your job. You're passionate about what you do. You spend your own time making yourself better at your job. And as a potential employer, why would you not want somebody that's going to spend their own time making themselves better at their job for you? For me, it's an absolute no-brainer. For your customers, they will instantly... You're never going to look like it's your first day behind the bar. when you can flare. You will get people asking you how long you've been doing it for. You will often get people asking you, oh, how many do you drop? And the answer should be 0. You will during the learning process, but that's fine. That's when you're supposed to drop them. Once you get behind the bar, we're not dropping. So yeah, it's an instant way to show people that you care about your job. It's so visual, it's so impactful, and everyone will know straight away that you care. Number 2, it's visual and it crosses language barriers. Now this is important, and it's not, when I say language barriers, I don't mean necessarily internationally, but also if you're working in a busy nightclub, you may well not have the time to be chatting to your guests. It may be far too loud for you to be chatting to your guests. But again, you can still be entertaining your guests. You can still be making that connection with them and showing them, again, how much you care about the drink that you're making by visually showing your expertise. As a result, obviously, you don't need to be talking to people. You need to be able to hear them to take the order, and that's about it. Once you've done that, they will be able to visually see that you're making their drink. They'll know what's going on. Your other guests will be able to see that you're busy and that you're not just wandering around. So it's very, very visual and it's very instantaneous. It's something that will wow your guests at the bar and keep them happy even if they're waiting longer. Not that they should be waiting longer because you're flaring, but if it's a busy bar, you know. 3 is travel. So this kind of ties in with the language barrier thing. If you can flare, you can pretty much get a job anywhere you want in the world, and you will pretty much skip ahead of anyone else that's going for those bar jobs. Because again, as we jump back to number 1, it shows that you care about your job, it shows you know what you're doing, and it's kind of assumed that if you've put the effort in to learn how to flip the bottles and how to do all this, you will also have known your drinks, you will have learned how to pour accurately, you will have learned all of the rest of it. Again, you don't look like a beginner because you're flaring. So you will get the opportunity to travel with Flair if that's what you want to do. If I hadn't been a Flair bartender, I certainly wouldn't have got the job that I got in Dubai. So I lived out there for nearly a year, opening cocktail bars, very much fun. Then I came back from there and went out and lived in Kavos for about a month, which was, again, it was sort of towards the end of the season, no one was hiring, but I went out, I took my Flair bottles with me, and within a night I'd got a job that I started the following day. It's that simple. You can demonstrate your skill, you can demonstrate that you can pull a crowd, and that is valuable to people where they're competing against so many other bars. Number 4, it does not slow you down. If you're flaring properly and you are using the working flare type moves, it will not slow you down. If anything, it will speed you up. This is the way that I find anyway. I'm not stood behind the bar doing a 2-bottle tin routine or a 3-bottle routine or anything like that. I'm not really doing anything with setup bottles that have less than 3 ounces of liquor in them. 90% of what I do is with a full bottle. It's quick moves, it's whipping it out of the well, catching it behind my back and straight into a pour. That's, in all honesty, that is the majority of what we do. When you're quieter, you've got the chance to bust out a few extra moves and put in a short sequence, like a 15-second sequence, something like that. But you've got to kind of take a measure of the situation that you're in. You don't want to be doing those 15-second sequences, which 15 seconds isn't long. You will still make your drink quicker than probably every other bartender on that bar. But if you can make your drinks 15 seconds quicker, then make them 15 seconds quicker if you've got anyone waiting. So yeah, Flair, when it's done properly, will not slow you down. And the last one, number 5, you will keep the guests at your bar for longer. If they're entertained and they're not thinking to themselves, I'm sat here waiting for drinks, why am I sat here while stuff's going on and nobody's paying any attention to me? If you're flaring, they will actually be entertained, get to them quickly and obviously take their orders for the drinks. And you can be multi-serving. I mean, check out the post that we've got on the Bartender HQ site about multi-serving. If you want to be flaring, then brilliant. You can grab that bottle that you need for 3 drinks. do a 5-second sequence. You know, as you pull it out the rail, it goes behind your back, a quick shadow pass and pour. You know, these things don't take any extra time, but it will really make the experience better for your guests at the bar. So that's my kind of my top 5 reasons to flair. So it's an instant way to show that you care about what you do. It's a visual and crosses language barriers and noise barriers. You can travel the world if you can flair, and people will hire you on a whim. It's really, really quick, and people love to see it. It does not slow you down behind the bar. You will still take the same money. You will probably make more money and for your guests, as well as all of the rest of it. And you'll keep those guests that are sitting at your bar there for longer, because they won't be thinking, right, where should we go next? They'll be thinking, oh, that looks cool. So yeah, those are my 5 top reasons to Flair Bartend. So that's it for this week's show. Just a quick one. If you want to see these videos, check out the Facebook page, check out the YouTube channel. I will put all the links into the show notes. But if you search for YouTube and Bartender HQ, or if you search for Bartender HQ on Facebook, you will find it. It's no problems to find. There's not many Bartender HQs out there. And I'd love it if you would follow me on Twitter as well. It's at Bartender HQ. All one word, no hyphens, no underscores, anything like that, just at Bartender HQ. I really appreciate it. I'm just under 100 followers on Twitter at the moment, which is far too low. There's 850 odd of you on the Facebook page, so please get on over there and follow me on Twitter, because my partner is beating me at the moment with her mummy blog. She's on about 120 now, and that's upsetting me. So come and boost up my numbers. And until next time on the bartenderhq.com podcast, I've been David Sangwell, your host, and I'll see you next week in the new studio.
Thanks for listening to the bartenderhq.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at bartenderhq.
Oh, and if you do happen to be a parent, my partner's blog is actually really, really good. It's mamaboss.co.uk. She's Mama Boss Blog on Twitter, and follow her as well.